Hey everyone, it's Kerr from Daydream Nation, and I've got Joe B back to the channel. How are you, my mate?
I'm doing well. I got my Toxic Twins t-shirt on and I have my notes in my Draw the Line notebook. So I'm ready to go, my friend.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Today we are going to cover two albums, 1987 and Aerosmith Permanent Vacation, and the follow-up in 1989 of Pump. So just a little bit of context to this. This was a bit of these two albums were kind of regarded as a bit of a commercial comeback for Aerosmith. Aerosmith in 1985 put out an album called Done with Mirrors, produced by Ted Templeton, regarded Joe as a bit of a failure. I think the only song that may have charted was Let the Music Do the Talking, which was a Joe Perry solo song. The album didn't do well at all. And I think they only started to reignite their commercial fortunes, at least in these parts, when they did a collaboration between themselves and a band on the rise, the hip hop legends Run DMC with Walk This Way. That came out in 1986. It was a huge hit all over the world. Was it a hit in America?
Oh, it was massive. It was
Massive.
massive. Yeah.
Yeah. And their fortunes were on the rise, and Permanent Vacation was the album that came out. So let's get started. Tell us about what was your initial thoughts of in the day of Permanent Vacation.
Well, I've been an Aerosmith fan for quite a while. They were one of my first bands that I really got into. I've seen them over 30 times. The
Yep.
first four albums, in my opinion, are the best rock and roll ever made. Rocks is my favorite album of all time. So they fell on some hard times, their popularity wise. The band fell apart right around Night in the Ruts. Joe Perry went and did Joe Perry Project. Brad Whitford went out and did Whitford St. Holmes. That being said, Steven Tyler did release a kick-ass album in Rockin' a Hard Place, but didn't get a ton of traction as other bands were on the rise here in the United States. Then the aforementioned Done with Mirrors, they got back together. I was excited, but yeah, it was quite a disappointment. It sounded a lot more like demos. There's hardly any guitar solos. Even Let the Music Do the Talking was not as good as the Joe Perry Project version, in my estimation. So you get the collaboration with Run DMC, and it's huge.
Hmm.
Then they release Permanent Vacation, and Dude Looks Like a Lady is the first single. Now, I was incredibly happy that the band came back and was popular again, and they came back in a big time and was quite popular. Um, but it didn't resonate with me as an Aerosmith album that stood up to the when I originally liked them, the Blue Army albums that I originally got me into them and got me in the hard rock and heavy metal. But when it was released, it was an automatic hit. It was one of the biggest comeback stories ever in rock and roll history. Sold tons of copies, had three huge hits, one being a ballad, which I think went way over the line. I know that Tom Hamilton felt that way. But yeah, it was quite successful, and they went with outside writers. And every song except for two or three have writing help, like Desmond Child, Holly Knight, Jim Valance. So they had to do what they had to do to make the comeback. So it's a huge album. It's a comeback, but there's a piece missing for me. It's not like that. It's mixed. It's mixed feelings for me as far as
Mixed
the album.
feelings.
Yeah, yeah. But I was
Yeah.
happy. I was happy they came back, and the tour was great. They they
Mm.
they went on tour. They still play. They still had to play a ton of the old stuff. And Don and Dokken opened up for him on the tour, and were quite good. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That would have been a good tour. That would have been quite
yeah. It
interesting.
was it was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, I heard this album after the hit of Walk This Way, and in Australia we really didn't know much about Aerosmith at all, because Aerosmith are kind of a very localized type of phenomenon. They were very much an American superstar band, but outside America, they didn't really travel. They weren't big in the UK. They weren't that big in Europe. And again, in Australia, maybe one or two tracks, they weren't known at all. So really the introduction to a lot of people for Aerosmith was Walk This Way, and going into the back catalogue. I heard this album, and this came out, I think, in 1986, and I was into a lot of hair metal, a lot of hard rock, and to me, I found it was very polished, because you've got the production of Bruce Fairbairn, and he's done, you look at his CV, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, New Jersey, very slick, very polished. And that's the first thing that sort of hit me with this sound with Aerosmith, because I always, people used to say they were like America's answer to the Rolling Stones, really raw, really grungy, very riff-tastic. But this album, to me, was very polished. And it had a lot of different sort of instrumentation, like a horn section. There's a song that sounds slightly calypso. I didn't mind it. And it's because it sounded so different to what was happening in hair metal and hard rock. To me, reflecting and going back in time and listening to this album, it's like you had hair metal here, but Aerosmith are in a category of their own. They're completely unique.
In every hair metal band cited Aerosmith as their number one influence. So they were the godfathers.
Yeah.
Everyone was, particularly Rat, Motley Crue, Tommy Lee loved him.
Yeah.
So did Nikki Sixx. So yeah.
So I think in the day, I really gravitated to the instrumentation, because I didn't have the history with the band that you did. It may have been much more of a disappointing event for you, because you're used to the first 4 albums, but I wasn't. And my entry point was actually this album. And I liked it because, to me, it was heads and shoulders with a lot of the codswallop that was being put out as hair metal in the day. It was, seriously, it was fields apart. It was just, they were kind of in a league of their own. The songwriting, the production, just the instrumentation. So that was my impression. I liked it. I liked them a lot.
One thing that was interesting, and I don't know exactly how it came out, but it was very well publicized about their drug addictions. And it was very well publicized that they cleaned up their act for this album. Yeah. So we were happy about that as well. And it really shows that they put in the effort. But I agree with you. As far as what was coming out that year, head and shoulders above most of it. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, compare it to Theatre of Pain as an example. Poor Motley Crue.
No, well,
it's chalk and cheese.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you put the needle in the groove.
Yes.
And the first song that comes up, Heart's Done Time, and he does that little scat riff, and did you think, like, when you heard that first, vocal, sort of scream from Steven Tyler and the little bit of the boogie guitar, did you think, oh, they're back?
I did, yeah, because just the fact they were playing, they constructed a song compared to Done with Mirrors. Done with Mirrors was just really a half-hearted effort,
It's like demos.
So here I'm like, yeah, it was a pleasant surprise, definitely.
Yeah. Done with Mirrors is, I like it, but it's really scrappy and it sounds unfinished.
Definitely.
I think I've grown to like it a lot more. In the day, I mean, I actually got Done with Mirrors after this album, and I thought, wow, where are the songs? Because it sounds so unfinished. And you can understand why Geffen were sort of scratching their head, because other than let the music do the talking, you'd be struggling to find a hit single. So
exactly. No, yeah.
I think this album had to happen. Not only they were doing Rehab in their personal lives to get off the drugs. I think they had to do musical rehab to get back to what Aerosmith were doing, like
And in the bands,
writing hit songs.
right. In the big bands were bringing in the popular bands bringing in outside songwriters, and they went for it as well.
Bon
And it worked
Jovi.
out for
Yeah, like Bon Jovi.
Bon Jovi. Heart
Yeah.
Heart became massive again with outside songwriters.
Love it or hate it, that Bon Jovi Slippery When Wet was a very influential album in that day in respect of the blueprint of what's a hit, because
Yeah.
it not only had a little bit of metallic crunch for the folks like you and me, but it brought in the women. It brought in a much broader pop audience, because you don't sell that many units if you're just doing four on the floor boogie rock. You've got to have that little bit of polish.
Right.
And
But
I think the
I'm
guy
glad
that
you're bringing that up, because with this album and then the subsequent albums that were released by Aerosmith, they garnered that female audience, which put them in the superstardom. Because when I saw them at first back in the day, it was all dudes, and that's why they called us the Blue Army, because it was all guys in jeans.
yeah,
But once this album became a hit and Angel became a hit and Dude Looks Like a Lady, then the next, we'll talk about the next album. But yeah, then you go to the shows now and it is at least half women.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My wife
Yeah.
loves them. My wife
Yeah.
probably likes Aerosmith now more than I do. I'm talking about
Yeah.
the now Aerosmith,
Right.
not
Yeah.
the Aerosmith of Pump, which I'll talk about. Mate, let's talk about some of the songs on the album, if you don't
Let's do
mind.
it.
Let's spotlight a couple of songs. How about we throw Dude Looks Like a Lady? That was the first song I actually heard.
Yes.
What do you
I
think of
thought
that one?
it was out of the box. It was crazy. I enjoyed it. I don't know if it has aged well for me, but it was definitely something. I thought it was kind of an extension of what they did with Run DMC and Walk This Way. They had some with the weird effects and everything, but it worked for them. It had a great subject, and it's still timely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
And it's about Vince Neil.
apparently it was the original song was "Cruising for a Lady," and then this Desmond Child worked it around and turned it into "Dude Looks Like a Lady," and it worked for him. Yeah.
So Steve Tyler was in a bar, and he saw a guy with blonde hair, and it was Vince Neil, and the story is apparently about him. So,
and the video has one of my favorite. Her name is Rebecca Ferrati. But she's in the video and she's absolutely gorgeous. So, yeah, I mean it worked for him.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's got
way out of the box.
A lot of people don't realize about Aerosmith is they've got a lot of groove and they swing. And a lot of metal bands are kind of plod. Boom, boom. But these guys are always in the pocket, and there's a little bit of a swing. And you can actually, it's one of those rare hard rock bands that you can actually shake your ass to. There's a little bit of a swing, bit of a groove. This song has a lot of groove. Actually, the whole album has a lot of groove to it, because the pocket, Tom Hamilton and Joey Kramer are in the pocket, and they just push it along. Another thing I want to talk about is they've got a great sense of humor. Their lyrics are so totally tongue-in-cheek.
Yes.
So Motley Crue, when they talk about, bum and tits, pardon the pun,
right?
It's not that funny. But when Steve Tyler does it, it's kind of funny, because it's
he does the double, and he does that double entendre that makes it. I think it makes it more. It's more interesting and more dangerous. With that type of lyrics.
He's a clever wordsmith.
Yeah.
I put him up at David Lee Roth level, because a lot of this is kind of in that David Lee Roth clever wordsmanship.
But if you look at the whole body of work of Aerosmith, I can see where Steven Tyler had his gripes with the rest of the band, because he did a lot. I would say if anybody in the band did the heavy lifting, it was Steven. He's always writing songs. He's always composing. He's always getting the band the shape. Yeah, he gives the other band members fits, but even if you watch the early concert footage, he's the guy that's constantly. He had no backup vocal. I mean, now he does,
Hmm.
but he is the true leader of the band. You
Well,
know,
I've seen him. I've seen him twice. Who? What are your eyes on? Him and Joe Perry, probably second. The other guys, not so much. Your
yeah,
eyes are on him because he's moving. He's moving the stage. He's working it. He's doing all the forward rolls and climbing the stacks. And it's
right.
either him or Joe Perry that your eyes are on.
Yeah,
He's
but even so, like I said, like so, I've seen him over 30 times. But back in the day, you didn't have your eyes on Joe Perry. He sometimes he was so messed up. He played with his back to the audience.
wow.
Yeah,
I
you
I,
can look at
I don't know these.
yeah,
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 yeah. When yeah they put on some pretty sketchy perform or live performances when they had their drug issues. But at this time, they became quite a tighter live for sure because they cleaned
absolutely.
up their act, somewhat.
Yeah.
But go on with some more tracks.
Oh
Let's
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
What about we talk about Girl Keeps Coming Apart? Now this is interesting because it's got a bit of a Motown soul feel. They bring
right.
the brass in. It's got a bit of a groove. What do you think of this? Do you think it's one step too far for Aerosmith that they kind of have a? It's kind
If
of like
there's a
got a little
song,
bit of Motown.
it has Motown. No, I mean it's okay. It's something that I'll skip. There's a couple songs that I'll skip on here,
Yeah.
but it's interesting you picked that song because when I was, re-listening to it over the last few days, preparing for this, I was like, I would put it in the middle of the road on this album.
Mm, yeah. I think it's interesting. I don't dislike their use of the brass instruments, and it's interesting that Motley Crue actually borrowed and put a bit of brass or a bit of horns on their Dr. Feelgood. So they were
Well,
definitely listening
I
to
mean,
this
it's all
album.
tied together. They go up to Vancouver to try harder. They
Yes.
Bruce Fairbairn, and then
Mm,
Bob Rock's involved in this as an engineer, and then Bob Rock goes
mm,
off on his own and becomes a producer.
yeah.
So it's all that sound that's getting developed out of the Vancouver.
Mm,
They're all cleaning up and they're all going up to Vancouver and
mm,
releasing better albums.
absolutely.
Yeah.
St. John. I think that's pure dirty bluesy Aerosmith.
Yes.
This, I mean, out of all the polish, this is one of the few ones. I think it's a self penned song. Tyler did it.
Yeah.
It's really organic. It's a real natural bluesy song. It hasn't got all the embellishments. Do you like this song?
I do. Yeah, I do. And you nailed it perfectly. And the thing about Steven is he can write songs on his own. He can play any instrument, including the drums. He is a classically trained musician. So he's written some of Aerosmith's best work just by himself.
Hmm. Yeah. What about the Beatles cover? I'm
Down.
I
I mean,
don't mind that
it's
either.
cool.
That's
I
cool.
like it. I
Yeah,
like
I'm
it a lot.
down.
Yeah.
I think that's an
Yeah.
inspired and a lot of their harmonies remind me of early Beatles. When they got
Yeah. Well, I
you
mean,
know,
so, before, right when the band was falling apart, they did the Sergeant Pepper and they released a kick-ass version of Come Together. So they obviously already have covered the Beatles at this point. So they're doing it again here, and they're doing
mm,
it quite well, just like they did with Come Together.
that album's on my wish list. I haven't got it. I've always gone to record stores and picked it up. The Bee Gees disaster. The
Oh, it was a
Sergeant
horrible
Peppers.
movie.
Have you got that
I had
album?
my dad take me, and I was like, I just wanted to see Aerosmith, and I was like, oh my gosh, get me out of here! So embarrassing. They were called
Yeah,
what was it, the Evil Band or something? I forget. The Evil Villain Band. I think that's what they were called.
yeah. But
But
I
it's
think
a
they
great
came
version of
out
Come
smelling like
Together.
roses because they've got one of the good cover songs
Exactly.
on
Yeah.
that album. Um, Permanent Vacation. It's got the calypso. That's where it gets a little bit twee for me, a little bit dated. Dated. I don't
See, now
understand it.
I could see your point, but I have a weakness for the songs. I like when the other members of the band participate, and I like the
Mm,
fact Brad Whitford wrote this song and they had the title track named after it. So it has a soft spot for me. when like Tom Hamilton's involved or Brad Whitford's involved with the songwriting, I always give it more of a pass because I like when bands participate, as a band, like
Yeah.
Aerosmith does to a certain extent, but like Queen is my number one example where everybody participates in the songwriting. And
Yeah.
so I mean, the whole album in a way sounds dated, but I don't mind Permanent Vacation. I mean, they have the sound effects and they have the calypso, but it's the Permanent Vacation. And
Yeah.
honestly, Brad Whitford did a great job. There's even Joe Perry said Brad Whitford is a more talented guitarist than he is. There again, Brad Whitford went to music school and Joe Perry's self-taught.
Yeah.
The thing about, Joe Perry does develop more into a guitar player at this point.
Oh, he's got some wonderful licks,
Yeah. But
wonderful
I
guitar
had issues
solos in
with
this album.
I have issues with a lot of his guitar tone on this album moving forward.
Right.
But
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. I actually wrote that as a positive on this album, where he injects himself in these really tasty little lead breaks or tasty riffs. He's really
Right.
good.
Yeah.
Getting back to I'm actually a fan of the movie. I know it's an instrumental and they all
No, it's
composed
cool.
it, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit off the wall. It's a little bit different, outside the box. So I actually like that.
I agree. It's very cool. Yeah.
Ragdoll, a bit of
All right. So
boogie, bit of
now we're getting
bluesy.
into the hits. So that was either the number 2 or number 3 hit. So they had 3 hits. I mean, you got Holly Knight and Jim Valance, totally wrote this song with them. It's a hit. I mean, it was good for them. Would it be in my top 10 Aerosmith songs? No.
Yeah.
It's on the radio. Do I listen to it? Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We've spoken about Jim Valance, haven't we, on Creatures of the Night? He's a bit of a song doctor, isn't he?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they certainly brought in a few here. Hey, I have to say that I'm not a fan of Angel. That's kind of run
All
of the
right. So
mill.
I'm glad you touched on this.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Steven wrote some great ballads like Home Tonight on Rocks and You See Me Crying on Toys in the Attic. That's good stuff. I think he went a little over the edge here with Angel, and then it would come back even later with I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, which he didn't even Aerosmith didn't even write.
Don't even get me started on that song.
Yeah, I know,
my friend.
but no, Angel, no, and I know Tom Hamilton came right out and said, yeah, it goes a little too far. They'd never play it live. But it was huge. It was a big hit. It put, this what sold 5 million copies, right? And it's because of the videos and the 3 singles and it's like I said, Angel definitely contributed to them being one of the greatest comeback stories of all time.
Yeah.
And it also brought in a huge female audience.
Absolutely.
Every girl loved the song Angel. Every dude who saw him back in the late 70s, early 80s were like, what the hell? But
yeah. I think it's one of the songs that I kind of skipped over, and I don't think it had any traction here. I think out of all the songs in these waters, Dude Looks Like a Lady was probably the popular song, and Ragdoll, but Angel might have appeared on music video once or twice, but had zero sort of traction.
Now it was big here, and I think that brought in a lot of female audience.
Yeah. It didn't hurt that Aerosmith are always compared to the Stones. And you can sort of see the comparison where you've got a singer who's got big lips. Sort of, he looks like a little bit of Jagger, and they're both extremely charismatic, no doubt about it. They're very charismatic front people.
Yeah. I mean, it's got the same amount of band members, and you got Tyler and Perry and Jagger and Richards. So, there's the comparison.
And Stones put out an album in that year or roundabouts, Dirty Work, which went nowhere. So, I mean, to the audience that were looking for that old-time classic bluesy, this is the perfect anecdote. If the Stones aren't putting anything good quality, let's go to Aerosmith.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that segues into my next album that I'm going to talk about, which was this, just one quick thing, that actually did 5 platinum, hit number 11 in the US charts. This album did, I think, 7 million or 8 million, and did even more business. The Pump album. So what was your first impression of this album?
So my first impression was this sounded more like the Aerosmith I got into. I liked it. I liked the fact there were less outside songwriters. I liked the fact that one of the hit songs was written by Tom Hamilton. I think this is the last good Aerosmith album, honestly. It's and I listened to it again, thank you, and I still enjoy most of it. I just really I was into it. This is what I was hoping Done with Mirrors would sound like. You know, this is what I thought it would sound like, honestly. But you got a song like Monkey on My Back, that I think that goes right back. That falls in with their hard rock and original catalog. I think Love in the Elevator was a cool song. Janie's Got a Gun is a great song, and Tom Hamilton writes it. But Other Side is a cool song. What It Takes is the ultimate, I'll let you delve into the song. Yeah. But no, I liked this a lot more than Permanent Vacation. I thought it was going right in the right track. I thought it fell more in line with the Aerosmith I fell in love with.
Yeah.
And I liked the fact that there weren't as many outside songwriters on this, and I think you can hear it in the sound. It's heavier.
Yeah. Well, I think that Permanent Vacation, they need to go to musical rehab and get these outside writers to get their mojo back. And I think with this album,
the album, you heard that they started working out, and I was in the working out, and I was all in it. I'm like, I thought the name was cool too, and it just, I'm like, all right, they're clean, they're rough and ready,
they're energized, and I think they stripped the, most of, I mean, there's only a few songs that have a co-write on this. It was back to the Steven Tyler and Perry songwriting partnership. Yes. And I loved it when I first heard it. I thought, this is outstanding. And it was a very stripped back. So, I mean, it's polished, but there was much more crunch, much more of that sort of bluesy feel. And it was less embellishment of, needing to bring in horn sections. I mean, there's all these little instrumentation between tracks that are quite interesting. A few world music. There's even a didgeridoo that they bring in for one of the songs.
Right.
But overall, I found the songwriting was much better, and it was much more in line with the Aerosmith, the classic Aerosmith sound. Now, by the time that I heard this album, Joe, I was pretty well versed in Aerosmith, because I went back and grabbed a lot of those old catalog albums, like Toys in the Attic, which I love. Yeah. The first 4. So, yeah.
So definitely. Rocks is my all-time favorite album, bar none. So
Toys in the Attic's pretty good, though.
Yeah, it is. It comes pretty close, but Rocks is it for me. But
yeah.
Why don't you delve into the tracks?
My favorite album, and I'm contrarian, is Night in the Ruts. I love that album.
Night in the Ruts rules. Night in the Ruts is great. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. There are some crazy guitar licks on there that I can't even figure out. And it's great, man. Bone to Bone, I mean, Whitefish Boy is one of their best songs ever. Yeah.
We'll do a whole different show on that. But that album is so dirty. It's so awesome. Grimy, and it's awesome.
Yes.
It's a killer. It should have been a huge hit. But again,
I know.
all this band politics, it's just, I don't know. They were their own worst enemy. They could have been megastars in the 70s if they just had it under control, but there was just all this
there was
substance abuse, internal bickering,
substance abuse, management. I mean, they played these tours called World Series of Rock and everything, where it'd be like 5-10 bands. They were playing football and baseball stadiums and everything. So they were huge, and they would be the headliner. But
and I remember you read interviews with them, and they can't even remember playing.
Exactly.
I mean, what sort of a life can you lead if you can't even remember playing?
My cousin, I have a cousin a couple years older than me. He started going to concerts before me, and he went to one of those World Series of Rock. And I'm like, how was Aerosmith? And he's like, oh, they sucked. He goes, they could barely play their instruments. They were so messed up. He goes,
Yeah.
but there was this band from Australia that blew everybody away. They played first called AC/DC. And I'm like, no
Yes.
way. Yeah. And that's when Power Age was out. So that's how I immediately got into AC/DC. But yeah,
Folks, it's on YouTube. Check it out. They came on at 11:30 in the morning and
yes,
they blew the place apart. And you
yes,
know how bad it is for a band to come in, the hot sun beating off the concrete, and you're basically against the odds to win over a crowd at 11:30. Well, they did it because you know what, Angus, he just was going into the crowd. He was doing his usual,
exactly. Yeah,
running
yeah,
around like a maniac. They're
yeah,
on fire. Anyway, back on track. Pump.
yes.
I loved it. So let's talk about some songs. Love in an Elevator. I actually laughed my ass off when I first heard it. I thought that is the funniest lyric. It's just so double entendre, cheeky. And this is a lyric that David Lee Roth would cut off his arm and leg for. It's right in his
Yeah,
ballpark, don't you think?
it was great. The video was great. Saw it is like a up to date walk this way.
Yeah.
It just had a great riff. Like I said, I have no issues with this album. Really, it just
Mm,
really, I enjoy the song. I still enjoy it.
yeah.
Yeah,
A bit of a change of pace. A band like this, and they've got, they're talking smart and it's really sort of cheeky, but they do it in such a clever way. And they're capable of writing a song like Janie's Got a Gun, which deals with child abuse with
right.
sensitivity. It's compelling, it's dramatic,
Yeah,
and it's
it's a
one of their
great song.
greatest songs.
And again, I like I said, I like when Brad Whitford and Tom Hamilton are involved, and Tom Hamilton wrote this with Steven. So yeah, great song.
It's a deserved, I think it went to number one, number two, but a deserved hit. And
Yes,
there were forces within the record label that didn't want it to come out because they thought nobody would buy it. They didn't like the controversy, the potential hurdles, but I think it's brave that they were able to put out something that is a sensitive subject matter and handle it with sensitivity and make it
yes,
compelling.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this shows what a class act this band is, that they are able to bring out nuggets like this.
right.
They're not just smart and, there's just that usual TNA. They can do material like this. They're
Yeah,
versatile.
yeah. And that being said, if I can go on to the next song, Monkey on My Back. It's about their struggles with drugs, and
Mm,
it's a badass song. And when he says, I get that effing monkey off my back, I'm like, this is cool as hell.
yeah,
This is 70s Aerosmith in 1989.
yeah,
So yeah, I love that tune too. There's still an element of danger in this album,
mm,
whether it's
yeah,
Janie's Got a Gun with that subject matter or Monkey on
yeah,
My Back talking about getting clean and sober.
yeah.
It's great stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know how
I
you
like
feel
all
about
the
that
tracks
song.
on this album. The only one that I'm not fussed on is probably Don't Get Mad, Get Even. That's a little bit, it plods a bit. I'm not a big fan of that song.
Agreed. Yeah, I
Yeah.
could. Yeah,
But
yeah.
they found their mojo. They're going back to their roots, blues, bit of R
I
and
think
B,
the beginning
and
of Fine is so cool, where
yep,
he gets a guitar, up. It starts so low. No, 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 no.
yep.
I love that stuff. Yeah,
Joey Kramer's drums. I mean, like Young Lust. That's the opening track, and it's like that. Was he? I mean, correct me. He had a double kick, or was he a single kick drummer?
no, he was single kick. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's got that really rapid fire beat, and he's drumming on this album with Tom Hamilton on bass. They're just in the engine room.
yeah.
Just puts that, you know, into such a swing. I tell you what, I saw Aerosmith about 5, 6 years ago. Might have been even longer, 10 years ago. And Van Halen were headlining. It was a one and only concert in Australia. And Aerosmith were quite disappointing, to be quite frank. And Joey Kramer, he's no longer in the band, I don't think.
Right.
He's been put on the bench, and there's been a lot of conjecture, but yeah, his drumming was really kind of a little bit behind the beat, and he was not the drummer that saw in 1989. Look, I know I'm going to cop a lot of shit off people, viewers. Oh well, he's this age, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying
but
that.
you know who the tough Steven Tyler had always been tough. I mean, Steven Tyler's, like I said, he could play
Mm,
everything, and he would beat the crap out of Joey Creamer on a nightly basis. Not keeping up on the beat and keeping the time and
yeah,
everything. So
but
yeah,
I had a mate who didn't know Aerosmith from a bar of soap. He just came in cold, and he said the band's fine, but the drummer, he was kind of
yeah,
like struggling. So I can sort of see that they had some issues there. And the song set was terrible. There was a lot of that get a grip onwards material,
yeah.
which I
I
just didn't
can't
like.
stand it.
I wanted
Exactly.
to hear the classic 70s era, but it's just
So
like
they
they
changed
just,
their set lists up a lot. Where
yep,
I've seen them on the same tour where, yeah, it would be mostly from Get a Grip or Pump On, and I've seen them on the same tour where they played most of the stuff off the first six albums.
yeah,
So they'll play, and sometimes it's cool. Sometimes it will drive you crazy because you don't know what to expect. But they do change up their set lists quite a
mm.
bit.
But I saw them in 1990 in Australia,
Yeah,
off the back of the pump, and they were absolutely superb. They
yeah,
were energetic. Joe Perry's riff, Steve Tyler was compelling. You just can't keep your eyes off him. He's just going left to right. He was just like
yeah.
an energizer bunny, and the band was just firing. The
Yes,
back end, I just no complaints, and the material was a merge of Pump and Permanent Vacation, but a healthy dose of their early stuff, which I love because we'd never been exposed to that. But
exactly.
seeing it 30 years later, it was all modern, all the radio stuff, get a grip onwards, and that was very disappointing.
Yeah.
So Joe, um, Pump, I guess you would rate that higher than Permanent Vacation?
Yes, and if I can touch on one more song,
Yes.
uh, "What It Takes" was a huge hit here, constantly on the radio. Ultimate girlfriend song. That was the song. It's not totally a sappy ballad, but it was a
Mm,
fun song to listen to with your girlfriend, and whatever came with that. But it was that I really enjoy. I still enjoy listening to it. It's a staple in their live set still. If they play, they'll play. A lot of times they won't play Janie's Got a Gun. They'll play Love in an Elevator, and they'll play What It Takes off this album mostly when they play live. But yeah, I have to give props to that tune.
yeah.
As
Well,
far as
I guess what makes it not sappy is their sincerity in the lyrics.
yeah,
And I think Tyler, when he sings it, he has conviction. He really
yeah,
believes in it. And
yeah. But that was
that's
that was 89, 90 was the year where if summer you had the windows down, you're in the car with your girlfriend, that song comes on the radio, everything's all good.
mm,
So yeah,
yeah. Look, I really think in the years 89 to 90, you had a whole bunch of hair metal bands, and then you had Aerosmith. They were just a cut above.
agreed.
But
Yeah,
I wouldn't even put them at heavy metal. I always think they're just like rock.
yeah,
They're sort of maybe a little bit heavier than the Stones.
agreed.
America's
Yeah,
answer to the Rolling Stones.
yeah, yeah.
So, um, just to wrap it up, maybe you want to tell the viewers about your current endeavors in seeing Aerosmith this year.
So I had tickets for October 11th with the Black Crows and the
Yep.
whole tour. So first they played a couple dates, and then they said Steven had throat problems. So they postponed a handful of dates. And I was supposed to be at the show where they would come
Mm,
back in Tampa. Then I got an email a week before saying the whole tour has been scrapped or postponed. Still can't get a refund. we're waiting to see if they're going to reschedule dates or what. But who knows what's going to happen. I've seen them so many times. I kind of want the refund, and I'm kind of more ticked off I didn't get to see Black Crows. I also dropped the ball because Black Crows played a full show here, and I wasn't paying attention. I should have gone. But because they're dropping those, they had those shows dropped in between this tour. But we don't know what the state of the band. They said his larynx, it's not, he's got polyps in his throat and he screwed up his larynx. So I don't know. I had tickets for them. Last time I saw them live was their residency in Las Vegas. That was way too polished. It was fun, but it wasn't an Aerosmith show. It was a Vegas show, and it was mostly Vegas. I was the only guy who had an Aerosmith t-shirt on, and it was sold out. I had my Draw the Line t-shirt on. They played Rats in the Cellar. I was the only guy going crazy, and then they play, Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Everybody loses it. But even there, I was going to go see him in the residency again, and they canceled that. Steven Tyler had some legal problems from way back in the day. So you don't know what's actual health issues and what's actual, legal problems. So who knows what's going to happen? I saw Joe Perry solo in April. I sent you a picture. I met him. It's the third time I met him. That show was incredible. That show was like seeing Aerosmith back in the day, but they were clean. And he had Gary Sharon singing. In fact, Gary Sharon, I would have no issues if Aerosmith just picked up Gary Sharon and did the tour without Steven, because he knows the songs. He sounded great.
Oh,
and
poor Gary. That could be third time unlucky.
Especially if it was Van Halen. But so who knows what the future of the band holds on right now.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed that you get to see them, and maybe they.
I was so excited to talk to you and get you a Black Crows t-shirt and everything and mail it out to you. And it all fell apart. So, we talk to each other. We email each other constantly. So I will let you know as soon as I find something out. But
absolutely. Yeah. Well, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on the channel, Joe. I love to get these real live testimonies of in the day and gigs as you've seen them. And I've never done an Aerosmith show on Rock Daydream Nation, so it's long overdue. And I'm sure we'll be talking about some more Aerosmith in the future.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Please check out Joe on his channel, Wasting Time with Average
Joe.
Average
Joe, yes. So I interviews, but I've thrown up some concert footage at recent shows I've been to and gotten quite a bit of views. Who thought that Dave Grohl and Shania Twain would share a stage? But I saw it firsthand, and it's up there. So I have a couple shows coming up. We're going to do a King's X show, and I'm going to review a couple books and the new Stones album, which I really like. So
absolutely. I've got the Stones album. I've listened to it once, but I need to listen to it a few times to digest it. So there's a lot of people on YouTube, Joe, and they just listen to it once and they just go onto YouTube and then blab. But it's you've got to listen to things a few times just to let it soak in.
I think it's really, really good. In fact, I think going back to Aerosmith, when that Music from Another Dimension or whatever, that was an awful album. And I don't understand why they couldn't do what the Rolling Stones just did. I think that's basics. You get it, or what Judas Priest did with Firepower. You get a guy in there and just, okay, this is what you're going to do. And this is what you got to sound like. And they had Jack Douglas producing, and it was a pile of dung. But I like this Stones album. I really do.
Yeah. So. Well, we might cover it on another show.
Sounds like a plan, man. Anytime you want, I'm here for you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to have you on.
All right.
Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Click the bell. It's just a small channel. We're building a community. But one thing's for sure, you'll see me and Joe on a show very soon. Cheers.